Good evening. This is Felicity. You can't see me yet. I'm in my library and I am looking at what I call the Forest of Bookmarks. All right, that's enough of that. These here are a very small set of books in my library which are not finished, being reread, have a bookmark in them. They all have a bookmark in them. I display them this way so you cannot see them because the entire library, there's a subset of it, a very large subset of the books in my library that have a bookmark in it. I'm going to briefly move these out of the way because I'm actually going to talk about them tonight. This is this evening. This is what I'm reading, and this is kind of a weird look into the way I read, which is all the books all the time. And just for the fun of it, I thought I'd show you, this is this is the bowl of bookmarks. I collect a bookmark from every bookstore I've ever been in. I've been in a lot of bookstores. and some that aren't bookstores, just, oh yeah, I'll have a little show and tell sometime. The bookmarks, some of them are phenomenal, and they go back decades. There you go. So bookmarks. This evening, my little discourse is on the Forest of Bookmarks, which is this large subset of my library of books that are not finished yet, and I have a marker. So I'm going to show the book, and I thought just for fun I would open it. Some of them I don't even remember where I left off. I will open the book at the bookmark, and I will read a sentence, or maybe two if it looks interesting, where I am at. Let's see. We shall start with number one is Herodotus, the histories. This is my nice penguin version of Herodotus. I do actually have most of Herodotus now in the Loeb Library, and I'm not going to read it from that because I'm reading it from this. I've got the whole thing. Let's see. There you go. There's a bookmark in there. Where did I stop in this one? Right in the middle. Apparently, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of Persian customs. And this is not pre-arranged. I'm just opening it at a bookmark, and if it turns out to be really weird, then it's really weird. All right, here we go. As for ceremonial, when they offer sacrifice to the deities I mentioned, they erect no altar and kindle no fire. The libation, the flute music, the garlands, the sprinkled meal, all these things, familiar to us, they have no use for. But before a ceremony, a man sticks a spray of leaves, usually myrtle leaves, into his headdress, takes his victim to some open place, and invokes the deity to whom he wishes to sacrifice. There we go. It's a sentence. Herodotus, the histories. Herodotus is kind of an interesting fellow. He traveled a bit, and he read a lot, and some of his histories are just recounting the myths and legends that were around as being possibly truth. We'll see anyway. Number two, from the other side, is one which I just got recently, and yes, I have. Here we go. There is the bookmark, and there is the book. This is my little collection of short stories, Partners in Wonder, which after I started it, realized it was even more fun than I realized at the beginning. This is not just Harlan Ellison, but each one of these is a short story that Harlan Ellison wrote in conjunction, in partnership with each of the authors on the cover. So this was the one that I picked up in my last mega haul. And so each story, and I've read a couple of them, so I think I'm on the second one now. A.E. Van Vogt, Theodore Sturgeon, Roger Zelazny, Aldous Budrys, and Robert Sheckley. Now, I read the intro to this. I stand firm in my opinion that Harlan Ellison was a pretty snarky dude. But there you go. These aren't bad. Actually, they're not bad because I mean, look at the people who wrote them. Well, this one actually has a bookmark. I finished the story before, which was the Sheckley story. There's a Sheckley story and Sheckley and Ellison. And the next story is called Brillo with Ben Bova and Harlan Ellison. And here we go. I'll just read the introduction because I know this is where I had stopped, so we're going to begin here. To begin with, Ben Bova, this is real, this is just a little historical background, has a milder temperament than me. He knows much more science than I do. He's married, and I'm not, and his wife makes better lasagna than the wife I don't have would make if I had one. None of which differences seem to have prevented us from becoming good friends. there you go. That's where I'm at. Now I can begin on the third paragraph because, making progress already. All right. I tend to stack my books more by size and stackability than by category or by content or whatever else. Anyway, here's another bookmark. This one is barely begun. This is one of the Loeb Library volumes. You probably can't see it from here. Let's see if I can make it close. This is I have complete now the geography of Strabo in all of its volumes in the Loeb. Now, I'm now no longer misled by the phrase the geography, because I thought this is going to be talking about the flora and fauna of wherever Strabo was, but in fact, there's a bit of that. But Strabo was also, they all fancied themselves philosophers and historians and mythographers and whatever else. So there we go. The geography of Strabo. It's been a while since I picked this up. You see where I left off. All right. Well, this is a nice bookmark too. This is from one of the bookstores I used to go to a lot when I was near there. This is Pegasus and Pendragon. I'm going to begin right in the middle here. Strabo says, but I must go back and consider each one of these points in greater detail. And first I say that both I and my predecessors, one of whom was Hipparchus himself, are right in regarding Homer as the founder of the science of geography. For Homer has surpassed all men, both of ancient and modern times, not only in the excellence of his poetry, but also, I might say, in his acquaintance with all that pertains to public life. And if I was really brave, I'd be reading a little bit of the Greek, which is on the other side, and then we'll have a little go at it. It's not very good yet. Analabontes de kath hekaston episcopaemen ton ereme non eti malon. And I'm not going to try much more than that. I can read the letters and I can read the words, but the comprehension is not there yet. There you go. So that is a sentence from Strabo's Geography, Volume 1 of the Loeb, and he does get a little bit more contemporary. We're still in the very, very early, more mythological, historical geography, not in the real, as we would say. Real. What is real anyway? Okay, now this one actually I got a very short time ago. I got two little tasty books when I was the bookmark is making progress in this one. There's two tasty books that I got while I was reading the one that I finished, which was Inherent Vice by Thomas Pynchon, which I absolutely loved. It was crazy Pynchon at his best. It was unfortunately started just a little bit too late in the evening, and so I was unable to finish it before I had to go to work. So I went to work thinking, I will go back. I really want to finish Inherent Vice because it's really good. And I got sidetracked by myself. Went to a bookstore and picked up a couple of tasty looking things, both of which are bookmarks now, but this one is actually getting pretty close to the middle. This is Thomas Cahill's Sailing the Wine Dark Sea, Why the Greeks Matter. I'm actually enjoying it very much. There's some parts that are, you wouldn't read them aloud to your children, but they make great reading for those of us reading silently in our chair and maybe chuckling just a little bit. Well, let me see where the bookmark's at. I was actually reading this over dinner, so I think there's something that's printable. Oh, yeah. So this is from the chapter How to Rule, which begins pretty wildly. He begins with the story of the very fortunate story of many of the chiefs who were fighting at Troy. Well, many of them got killed there, but in particular, the end of Agamemnon, or otherwise known as the fall of the house of Atreus. Oof, talk about blood and guts. So I had actually stopped right at the end of a poem, and this is a little tiny poem that is by Solon, who was trying to create some balance and equanimity is the wrong word, because I don't think that existed then, but certainly some sensibleness in the laws in Athens. Solon, whose name is now associated with wisdom and justice. So Cahill says, Solon's sensible verses, not nearly so gay or extravagant as many of the examples we considered in the last chapter. Oh, they were pretty They were pretty salty. Not reading you those ones. How about that? Struck a deep chord with the mass of Greeks who thought they touched on the truth, and with such clarity as to require no commentary. So here goes the poem. Not sure who his translator was, but he did a really nice, Cahill does a nice job of bringing everything in and has very contemporary sounding translations. Here's Solon's little poem. Happy he who has his sons and hounds, his horses and a friend far from his bounds. Just as rich he of abundant horn, of gold and silver, fields of blackest clod, and horse and mule. And he, though lesser born, who eats and sleeps well, and goes softly shod, and now and then enjoys a girl, lad, and vigor quite enough to have a go. Here is true wealth, for there's no one king or cad can take it with him when he goes below, and none of us can buy escape from death, or dread disease, or failing force of breath. Yeah, I'm probably not going to actually have a bookmark in this little guy for too much longer, because Sailing the Wine-Dark Sea is really excellent. And I realized after I had I saw this book in the store, I said, "Ooh, who's this Thomas Cahill character?" I looked him up on my handy dandy phone while I was my pocket phone while I was trying to decide what I was going to get, and I realized he's actually written a whole bunch of history books for the hoi polloi, history books that are not really history books, but historical musings, progressions, thoughts that somebody who is not a professional historian would truly enjoy. Very, very honorable procession of authors of this kind, not the least of which is my favorite, Barbara Tuchman. Anyway, Thomas Cahill makes very, very nice reading, not really deep, and at least not that I can see, not deep and requiring enormous amounts of thought over every word, but tasty, beautifully written, quite lyrical in places, and well researched. Anyway, I'm enjoying this a lot. So it's part of the Forest of Bookmarks, but the Forest of Bookmarks library, but not for long. All right, here goes Sailing. Then I have the other one that I picked up, which is it's a little bit farther in. I have to make choices. I can only read one book at a time. I just want to read them all. Oh dear. So this one I picked up at the same time as Sailing the Wine-Dark Sea. Well, there you go. The Lost Gutenberg, the astounding story of one book's 500-year odyssey. And I saw that was the first one. I said, oh, I'm getting this. I actually don't care what it is. I'm just getting it because of the title. It's me. I'm an addict. I'm sure there's some kind of a group that I could belong to that would help me with this addiction, but to heck with it. I don't think I want to be part of that kind of a club. Anyway, The Lost Gutenberg. I actually did start reading it. It's kind of couched right at the beginning, a little bit like, well, the memoirs of a book, but not from the book's perspective. It starts with a very old lady who acquired this Gutenberg Bible, and it makes a very good intro, grabs you right in, and invites you to find out more about collecting and some of the vagaries of collecting and collectors, and where the book went after this lady who was here. Estelle Doheny was the lady who owned this book before it became the possession of a I forget who bought it. I'll find out because I'm going to get there. Anyway, Lost Gutenberg is a tag near the middle, and let me see. So here we go. Oh yeah, show the bookmarks as I go. It's the Strand. Never heard of that bookstore before, right? Did you? Whatever. All right. That we're having a little. This is from a chapter called $1 Million Bookshelf, which is awesome because Doheny that's what she got into, was collecting ever finer books and refining her collection. I can only dream about and admire because it won't be me. Here the author, who is Margaret Leslie Davis, also did a really good job. So she's talking about the whole process of printing. The chapter I have here is Gutenberg's contemporaries had already begun to puzzle out how to make that, they're talking about letters, printing letters, work, experimenting with carving letters from wood or metal and arranging them into words to be stamped on parchment. The problem was that carving and recarving hundreds or thousands of letters one at a time to produce a book would be extremely time-consuming, and the letters would be subtly different from each other. A scribe could probably go faster and do a better job. And then it goes on. So this is actually fascinating, and a lot of it I know, but it's fascinating. It's nicely written, and I never get tired of reading about books and book collecting and how books are made and the history of printing and all those good things. I'm totally a sucker for that. So there you go, The Lost Gutenberg by Margaret Leslie Davis. All right, and next in this, I think we're kind of working my way down. Okay, a couple of these I've definitely shown before. So here goes my lovely Rabelais, which is the edition with the Heath Robinson illustrations. I tried to pick out several of those before, and I'm going to do it one more time before I get to the bookmark here, because I've actually read Rabelais a couple of times. Just am reading it again, so I'm going to be at a spot where I can do that. Do I want to show that one? I don't know. I'm just going to show one. Find a really tasty one. They're all pretty tasty. There's one at the end. I can find it. I don't know. There's one. This is kind of early. Here is a character named Hearsay. Look at him. Anyway, Heath Robinson. So where's my bookmark right now? My bookmark, I'm rereading. This is one, I think I haven't read the end ones as much, but the first book, which is already gone, already done, which ends with a wonderful scene. Let me see if all right. So this was the end of the story of Gargantua. So in the second book, which is, this is not the beginning of it, but here, this is where my bookmark was. It says Chapter 7, How Pantagruel Came to Paris, and of the choice books of the library of St. Victor. After that, Pantagruel had studied very well at Orleans. He resolved to see the great university at Paris. Before his departure, he was informed that there was a huge big bell at St. Anian in the said town of Orleans, under the ground, which had been there about 214 years, for it was so great that they could not by any device get it so much as above the ground, although they used all the means that are found in Vitruvius de Architectura Albertus de Re Edificatoria Euclidean Archimedes and here de Ingeniis. For all that was to no purpose, wherefore, condescending heartily to the humble request of the citizens and inhabitants of the said town, he determined to remove it to the tower that was erected for it. With that he came to the place where it was, and lifted it out of the ground with his little finger. I love Rabelais. As easily as you would have done a hawk's bell or bellwether's tingle-tangle. But before he would carry it to the foresaid tower or steeple appointed for it, he would needs make some music with it about the town, and ring it alongst all the streets, as he carried it in his hand. Wherewith all the people were very glad, but there happened one great inconveniency, for with carrying it so, and ringing it about the streets, all the good Orleans wine turned instantly, waxed flat, and was spoiled, which nobody there did perceive till the night following. For every man found himself so altered and adroit with drinking those flat wines that they did nothing but spit, and that as white as malt the cotton, saying, we have all the Pantagruel, and our very throats are salted. I'm going to stop there. That was actually almost one sentence. Rabelais, what a guy. Anyway, there you go. So that's where my bookmark was in this guy. Some of these I may say, oh, you know, why did I stop? Who knew? Who knew? All right, here's another one. This was from my, this was another one from my, Make a Book haul, and this was a Haruki Murakami. Said I wasn't going to last too long. Well, I'm actually more than halfway through. I've decided that these are all short stories, first person singular. These are all short stories, and I'm reading many of them while I sit on my stationary bicycle and bicycle to nowhere. There you go, exercise, whatever. So my bookmark here, which is from graphics, it says great graphic novels. There you go. Another bookstore. Sure, I must have gone there because there's one of them. Oh, it's from Books Inc. There you go. I was at Books Inc. for sure. All right, this is the beginning of the next short story that I had gotten to called Confessions of a Shinagawa Monkey. And it begins thus. I met the elderly monkey in a small Japanese-style inn in a hot springs in Gunma Prefecture some 5 years ago. The inn was rustic, or more precisely, decrepit. It was barely hanging on, and I just happened to spend a night there. There is the beginning. Murakami. I have very spare, very elegant, love his writing. All right, this one I realize this one actually might not be a reread because I did not recognize a lot of it, but this is from my permanent collection of Stanislaw Lem, this Imaginary Magnitude, and it's actually hilarious and also kind of hard to read at the same time. I'm going to read from the back of it. Introducing the non-existent. Like a perfect vacuum, Stanislaw Lem's collection of reviews of books which have never been written, Imaginary Magnitude, is an anthology of introductions to those which will never be. Stylistic burlesques of prefaces that led nowhere, dazzling conceits of forewords followed by no words at all. An appropriate introduction, which I've read, is followed by introductions to erotic X-ray photography. Oh yeah. Verbal communication between humans and bacteria. Literature created by non-human authors, a continually evolving encyclopedia of future knowledge, and dependent on a supercomputer that rebels against its intended use. Effortlessly leapfrogging the bottomless depths of a supremely indifferent universe, Lem touches lightly on these great questions which will always remain incomprehensible to man, but increasingly within the reach of his technological children. Where's my bookmark? The bookmark is right in the middle of, this is actually, here we go, this is, but Stribbe's work, I'm not even going to try, is predatory, for it is as horrific and comic as those trips of the damned into the abyss in old Dutch and Italian paintings. Since, however, we can distance ourselves from these sinners somersaulting into the Last Judgment, since we have cancelled the next world, what can we oppose to the X-ray picture? In these clinches, in which their bodies are an impossible obstacle to them, the skeletons are tragically comic. Mere bones? When we see people in an awkward, desperate embrace, it would be merely pitiable, were it not for the ghastly comic element. He's talking about bones, skeletons. Where does it come from? From us, for we recognize the truth. The justification of these clinches evaporates along with their corporality, and that is why their embraces are so sterile and abstract, and at the same time so terribly matter-of-fact, icy and pale, so hopeless. Lem, that stuff. Okay, now one of the books here, which is very honestly bookmarked, this is the this guy. Actually, this is volume 2, and I'm really nearly finished with it. Reading these ones one a day. This is my you truly cannot see this. I'm sorry. This is the complete Montaigne essays. This is the what is the edition here? Oh yeah, New York, the limited edition club, which is whatever, but the price was right. I saw a little preview. I've actually ordered it online because I've never seen this particular set, and I really like these little the little beginning arches and colonnades. They're all different. I don't think there's any repeats, and the essays are short. Each one, some of them are a little longer than others. The essays are short and sometimes ramble a little bit, but they usually come back to the point in the end. And each one of them is full of observations and reflections on his life, on life in general, on other people's lives, and liberal sprinklings of his classical readings and knowledge. He protests too much that he's stupid and can't remember anything because these are really great works. I just finished one this morning, and tomorrow I will be beginning. So here, I read the one on presumption, and this is the next one in line, and this one is entitled "Of Giving the Lie." Yes, but I shall be told that this plan of making use of oneself as a subject to write about, he's talking about himself, isn't that nice? I mean, he does this all the time. Yes, but I shall be told that this plan of making use of oneself as a subject to write about would be excusable in exceptional and famous men, who by their reputation had caused some desire for their acquaintance. It is beyond question, I admit it, and I know well that to look at a man of the common sort, an artisan will hardly lift his eye from his task, whereas to see a great and renowned personage enter a city, the workrooms and shops are deserted. This is good. So this is of giving the lie, and it begins thus talking about himself, this plan of making use of oneself, and that was the really neat thing that Tanya did, was all of his musings started with something from inside himself, whereas before, very structured and very classical, standing back. This is the object. I am just the conveyor. I'm the vessel of transmission, and don't look at me. There's nothing here to see. On Tanya, he is it is fascinating, and this was the first time through the complete. I read the excerpts. I actually have this over here. Just grab this for a second. This one was the one this is the one that the complete replaces, and this is the essays. This is a nice Penguin edition of excerpts. Many of them are in there, but this is just actually a very small subset of the entire collection of essays. So I am really enjoying, reveling, and taking my time. So that bookmark is fine. I don't think that bookmark's leaving for a while. When I'm finished with volume 2, it's going to go into volume 3. All right, this one I also picked up. Here we go. The bookmark is right up there. This one has just begun. Again, this one is The Waning of the Middle Ages, my nice copy of Johann Huizinga's seminal work. I did just finish Homo Ludens, which was just as interesting as I expected it to be. It was I kept getting stalled in sections of play as music, play as poetry. Very, very, very interesting. There were a few things in there that kind of struck a weird chord, as in this is part of his ideas and thoughts that were colored by what was going on at the time, which was he died in 1944, 45, and he died right in the middle of World War II, and he kept doing his scholarly work despite very, very difficult circumstances, for which I commend him entirely. I can't even imagine being there myself. I don't know what I would do. Anyway, Huizinga was a consummate scholar, and The Waning of the Middle Ages is definitely one of his seminal works. So this one, where's my bookmark right now? My bookmark is kind of at the beginning again. The Violent Tenor of Life is the chapter that I'm in. So in the feudal age, the private wars between two families have no other discernible reason than rivalry of rank and covetousness of possessions. True enough. Racial pride, thirst of vengeance, fidelity are their primary and direct motives. There are no grounds to ascribe another economic basis to them than mere greed of one's neighbor's riches, which is surprisingly echoed in, because that wasn't the Middle Ages, it's surprisingly echoed in some of Montaigne's essays, like the one that I think I read out loud in a much earlier video, where he is talking about the reasons for men going to war, or women, but men going to war. And here Huizinga says it in bold type. There are no grounds to ascribe another economic basis to them other than mere greed of one's neighbor's riches. Right. So, The Violent Tenor of Life. This is just beginning again. This is a repeat read from a few years ago. So I'm kind of enjoying that one too. It's taking my time. This one I've had in my library. There we go, bookmark. This one I've had in my library for a long time, and I acquired it from, I forget where, somebody or other. used. It looked interesting at the time, and it just has gradually gone from move to move, from shelf to shelf. And I was looking through my shelves, looking for something on some specific writers, because I forget what I was reading. It was probably something by Joseph Campbell. I can't remember now because bookmarks and so many different things. And oh yeah, it must have been Joseph Campbell, because here we go. The Oriental philosophers, the chapter titles are the Egyptians, Babylonia and Israel, Zoroaster, Hinduism, and so on. So yeah, this is just blurbs on the back that's not actually saying things. Let me see where I left off here. Ooh. Oh, this is dense. It isn't much of a bookmark. What on earth is this? Is this some sort of a piece of paper here that... I don't know, it's something about tobacco. Well, that was marking my place. I had this one for a while, I guess. 16 gummed cigarette papers. Maybe that was what was in the book. So bizarre. Okay. Why am I using that? Who knows? Anyway. Like the great poetic works that succeeded them, the Vedas are composed in Sanskrit, the most ancient of the group of languages from which English itself derived. But the Sanskrit that we study today was not the language of the early Aryan invaders of India. Arriving in groups or tribes, these invaders probably spoke a variety of dialects. It is possible that Sanskrit may not originally have been a vernacular tongue at all. The word itself conveys the notion of something which is reserved for special purposes, probably sacred ones. Just as hieroglyphic means sacred writing, so Sanskrit means sacred speaking. The composition of the Vedas in Sanskrit is another indication of their antiquity. It is also an indication of the esteem in which they were held. The classical sacral language would be used only for that which was considered holy and worthy of preservation. There you go, my very inappropriate bookmark back in there. So this is one I think I was dipping into a little bit. I think I found this chapter on the Vedas because I don't have the Vedas. I keep looking for it, and every time I think I've seen it in the bookstore, I look at this giant thing and I think, I'm not going to buy this huge book. I don't know if this is even the right thing, if there is such a thing as the right thing. So I'm reading around it, and have been for all. But this guy I just picked up and started recently. It's been in my library for a really long time. It's definitely part of the forest of bookmarks. Another one from my very recent book haul. There's a tiny little bookmarker in there. This one is a nice little colophon. I got this one at Moe's. This is one of the colophon editions, winter 1936. It's a collection of articles, mostly from book dealers. But it has a lot of interesting things for book collectors. It's got pictures. So let's see, where's my bookmark in this one? Where's Waldo now? Okay, yes, right. Yeah, it's the right bookmark for this one. This is Moe's bookmark. Right. Well, there you go. The contribution of Dinah Nuthead. Well, up again out of nowhere. An examination of the group of blank... Oh, right. This is from the New Chronology of American Printing. This was actually very interesting, looking and researching into the first printing in the United States. So an examination of the group of blank forms, which has provided the basis of this discussion, shows that 2 printers besides William Nuthead were employed in their production. At this time, we are interested only in the first of these, Dinah Nuthead, the widow of our St. Mary's City printer. William Nuthead died probably very early in 1695, for on February 7th, 1694 or 95, Dinah, his widow, was appointed administratrix of his estate. There seems little possible connection between the provincial American craftsman of our present interest and Queen Mary of England, but actually the date of that royal lady's death has a direct bearing upon at least one interesting problem in the history of printing in Maryland. Ooh, an interesting problem. I'd better read a little bit more of that later. Okay, Forest of Bookmarks. Then this one also came from that last book haul. That was a really very impressive one, and I started a bunch of them because, oh my goodness, they were some really fine books. This guy here is the This is Consilience. No, this was not from the book haul. I had this in my library and I decided it was time to read it. Consilience, The Unity of Knowledge by Edward O. Wilson, who died very recently. And I think I had read the blurb on the cover. So let's see what Mr. Professor Dr. Wilson has to say for himself. And this is in a chapter called The Natural Sciences. I'm actually not starting right in the middle because a bookmark just tells me, hey, I stopped somewhere on these 2 pages and let's find a sensible place to begin. Here we go. The passion for dissecting and reassembling has resulted in the invention of nanotechnology, the manufacture of devices composed of a relatively small number of molecules. Among the more impressive recent achievements are etching stainless steel pins with ion beams. Bruce Lamartine and Roger Stutz of the Los Alamo National Laboratory have created high-density ROMs, read-only memories, but we knew that, whose lines are cut so fine, down to 150 billionths of a meter, as to allow the storage of 2 gigabytes of data on a pin 25 millimeters long and 1 millimeter wide. Since the materials are non-magnetic, the information thus stored is nearly indestructible. Yet, there is still a long way to go. In theory, at least, atoms can be ordered to store knowledge. This is a really good writer, very interesting. And although, as I mentioned before, he is a scientist writing books for non-scientists. Edward Wilson never looks down, never talks down to his audience. He talks to you as if you were one of his group, just in words that you can understand. So I really like everything he's written, and I will finish this. I will finish all of them. Time. All right, what else have I got here? So this was another one that I had in one of my earlier videos. This is my dad's, John Perry Brown, The Ancient Israel and Ancient Greece, Religion, Politics, and Culture. And I started reading this finally because I was working on, and I finally do have this here, I was working my way through a history book, fascinating, and I kept pulling bits off the shelf to say, ooh, this one talks a little bit more about it, but I can't read everything at once. It's a job. I have to go to work. Pay for all these books. Anyway, my bookmark is currently, this one I got from the book fair. The Bancroft Library, a fine institution as part of the UC Berkeley campus. One that I wish I were able to be in more often, but did I mention that job thing? I gotta work. Anyway, so this is from The Complementarity of Ancient Israel and Ancient Greece. So the paragraph title is Hellas as the Cultural Innovator. Israel and Hellas share over against the Near East a sacrificial cult with special vocabulary and practices. Although in the beginnings of Israel, any man can be his own priest, see Gideon at Ophrah, Judges 6:25. In the centralized kingdom, a sacrifice becomes the monopoly of a hereditary priesthood, down to the Maccabean priest-kings and the high priests of the Herodian temple. From the time when every man did what was right in his own eyes, Judges 21:25, a steady retrograde movement leads back to the ancient Near Eastern pattern. While both cult and priests are criticized, there is no suggestion of carrying it out without them. By contrast, in Hellas, from the beginning, every man can sacrifice for himself. And that is from Ancient Israel and Ancient Greece. Again, that was inspired by the history book, which I'm going to get to at the end of this. Oh, yeah, my lovely, lovely, lovely. So here we go. This is one which I'm kind of enjoying, but I keep getting distracted. This is, On Paper by Nicholas Basbanes, and it really is just as good as I expected it to be. At the beginning, I thought was actually really just raced along because it's talking about ancient paper making, and I've gotten to a part where we're in kind of modern times now, but oh no, not quite yet. This is Fiery Consequences. Let's see. Why are we here? Oh, Fiery Consequences begin. Oh, cigarette papers. The invention by German clockmakers in the 16th century of the spring-loaded wheel lock dispensed with the necessity of using smoldering wicks or flaming candles for ignition. It employed the same striking concept, flint on steel, that sparks the modern cigarette lighter, and was followed 100 years later by the flintlock, a French improvement that remained popular well into the 1700s. In a parallel development, the 18th century British mathematician and scientist Benjamin Robins determined that elongated projectiles fired with spin have lower air resistance than spherical objects majestically thrown spiral past. An American football is a graceful example of the principle. Leading gunsmiths to cut helical grooves inside the barrels of muskets and artillery pieces, the process called rifling, from the French verb rifler, not pronouncing that right, to scratch, graze, or groove, gave rise to the era of the marksman and the sharpshooter and introduced a term for a type of firearm that is still used universally today, the rifle. It wasn't cigarette papers. It was the paper that was used to wrap the ball in when you were going to tamp it down in the rifle. And as I recall, there was actually a section here which talks about, because it was especially in the South during the Civil War, the North, the Union Army, that made a very, very distinct effort to destroy all of the paper manufacturing plants in the South, any ones that they came across, because paper was essential for all of these different things, and they used whatever they could to get those balls in there. Anyway, that was my bookmark from paper, and I have the bookmark, and this one is from Bell's Books down in Palo Alto, a lovely bookstore. Love that. All right, Bell's Books on paper by Nicholas Basbanes. Definitely having fun with that one. All right, this was from that wonderful Mega Haul from Moe's, and this is the Ill-Tempered Clavichord by S.J. Perelman. And every time I see that title, I gotta chuckle out loud, because of course it's a hilarious play on the Well-Tempered Clavier by J.S. Bach. The Ill-Tempered Clavichord. Let's see where my bookmark is. He says this about himself in the beginning. It says, this is Perelman's own blurb. This book can instantly be described for the masses as a gallimaufry, or hash. It is a new collection of odd and previously uncollected items that are related to each other only in the sense that all, continued on the back flap, have been spawned by that prince of spawners, S.J. Perelman. The contents range from dream sequences like Nirvana Small by a Waterfall to tender tales such as a girl and a boy anthropoid were dancing. So a girl and a boy anthropoid were dancing. Hang on, where's my bookmark? It's the beginning to another. It's the beginning. This guy. Oh, this is not a bookmark, but it is a bookmark because it's marking my book. This is a business card from Owl and Company Bookshop. I have, in addition to bookmarks, I have business cards. I mean, because really, as long as it's clean and isn't going to leave schmears in the book and doesn't have great bulk, anything can be a bookmark. Right, this was, okay, Piedmont Avenue? God, I don't even remember. I guess I went in there. Must have. Here you go. This little missile or tidbit from Perelman is called Nestle Road to Jeopardy. This is a title, a header from a newspaper. City cracks down on restaurants and hollandaise sauce cleanup. Okay. This is a quote. The sauce is loaded with dynamite when carelessly prepared, unquote, a health department spokesman declared yesterday. Quote, it has become one of the Bureau's worst headaches, ... end quote. Many temperamental chefs, it was learned, resent the health department's infringement on their culinary art. One chef, for example, refused to tell an inspector how he had made the sauce because it was a, quote, secret technique, unquote, that he had learned in France. Several weeks later, 5 persons contracted food poisoning at the restaurant because of the hollandaise. The health department then demanded to know the chef's secret and found that his technique consisted of straining the sauce through a cheesecloth bag that must be squeezed with the hands. The times. Oh dear. And then the next little sentence. This is the beginning. I'm not going to read anymore because then the bit that says where Perelman begins. Equal opportunity insulter. Great stuff. All right. So this one I had gotten a fair ways in, but I was definitely raising. This is Ron Chernow's the Warburgs. And originally I got that because I saw that this was about the Warburg family, and I'm fascinated by the whole concept of the Warburg Library, which is now ensconced at the Institute, and the Warburg collection is something which is almost Borgian, because it's not arranged by alphabet or by author. It's arranged by which book should lead you to the next book. So the shelving is a sort of a progression of knowledge, a progression of understanding and discovery, which is fascinating. I'm already forgetting the name of the Warburg who was the collector of the books. But the thing that also fascinates me about the family is although they were quite rigid in other respects, they were quite understanding, and they realized that this Warburg was not going to be in business, wasn't going to banking, he wasn't going to make any great economic strides in anything, except he was a scholar and incredibly well read, and was and had this obsession with the collecting of the books and arranging them. Anyway, so this is Cherno's. He's done a lot of these massive biographies. Author of Alexander Hamilton. He did one on Morgan, and he did one on House of Morgan, The Life of John D. Rockefeller, and a couple of others. They're massive. It's a really huge book. So the subtitle is The Warburgs, the 20th Century Odyssey of a Remarkable Jewish Family. So I bookmarked this at the beginning again. There we go. Chapter 1, The Matriarch. Jews settled as far north as the Rhineland after the Romans destroyed the temple in AD 70. Far from feeling alien, these wine growers and craftsmen felt rooted in Germanic soil. But their pastoral idol was shattered by the religious zealotry of the 11th century. Butchered by the Crusaders, they were expelled from their farms and forced into moneylending. During the Black Death, roving flagellants cursed the Jews for supposedly causing the bubonic plague by poisoning wells. They were also periodically accused of draining blood from Christian children to bake unleavened Passover bread. Yeah, I remember that one. The so-called blood libel. Like dark, disturbing figures from a grim fairy tale, the Jews would secretly linger on in the German psyche as ghouls tricked out in civilian clothes. This legacy would lie dormant, but never dead in the culture. So it is a very long book, and it's quite detailed. And this, as I was skipping around looking for the bit on the library Warburg, showed me a very, very interesting family, sometimes very unified, sometimes really dysfunctional, but a very successful family. And all the way through is this dark little trickle, this thread that became an absolute flood of anti-Semitism and resentment. As our friend said there, it's I really know this conflict was kind of more about desire for your neighbor's goods with greed. It had nothing to do with religion. It had to do with these guys are successful. They want what they've got. They've got more than I have, and I'm going to take it. There must be something wrong with them. Anyway, so I'm beginning this one again. This time I'm actually going to read it all the way through. So that's why I bookmarked at the beginning. Ron Chernow, The Warburgs, a fascinating book about an even more fascinating family. So the very last one, sorry about this, is kind of taking a while too. The very last one on my Forest of Bookmarks is another great giant tome, The History of the World by J.M. Roberts and Odd Arne Westad. This is a really fine work. I have a lot of history books. I am kind of addicted to getting them. I keep thinking, yes, maybe I will find the book which will tell me everything about everything, and that is a fallacy because there is no such thing. But within very stern limits, this is actually a very fine look at the history of the world. And it's not just sticking to the Western, everything leading up to the Western history. It's actually trying to look at everything. My bookmark, which is from Dark Carnival in one of my very favorite bookstores in Berkeley/Oakland. That is my science fiction go-to store, and I spend a lot of my money there. They're great. This is in the section called the Classical Age. I already got through Civilizations, which was kind of the beginning, and this particular chapter is called Christianity and the Western Transition, which is kind of why I guess I was picking up all those books on Oriental philosophers in my dad's book and so forth. We just finished talking about the works of the Jewish historian Josephus. He's recorded various things, but I wasn't going to do a background. I was going to just read where I was at. Here we go. This was not the end of Jewish turbulence, but it was a turning point. The extremists never again enjoyed such support and must have been discredited. The law was now more than ever the focus of Jewishness. For the Jewish scholars and teachers, after this time they are more and more designated as rabbis, had continued to unfold its meaning in centers other than Jerusalem while the revolt was in progress. Their good conduct may have saved these Jews of the dispersion. Later disturbances were never so important as been this great revolt, though in AD 117, Jewish riots in Cyrenaica developed into full-scale fighting, and in AD 132, the last Messiah, Simon Bar Kokhba, launched another revolt in Judea, but the Jews emerged with their special status at law still intact. Jerusalem had been taken from them. Hadrian made it an Italian colony which Jews might enter only once a year, but their religion was granted the privilege of having a special officer, a patriarch, with sovereignty over it, and they were allowed exemption from the obligations of Roman law, which might conflict with their religious duties. This was the end of a volume of Jewish history. For the next 1800 years, Jewish history was to be the story of communities of the dispersion, until a national state was again established in Palestine among the debris of another empire. There we go. So, thank you for listening. If you've gotten all the way through this, you're just as crazy, obsessed as I am. This has been Felicity in her library, enjoying reading a paragraph or a sentence or two from a very small part of the Forest of Bookmarks, the title of a subset of my library of books that are being read. And thank you very much for watching and listening. Good night.